What's up, guys? Welcome back to Lights Out F1 Podcast. I'm Patrick, that's Claire, and that's Jakob. And this weekend we had the Mexico City Grand Prix. Um, just jump right into it. What are you guys' thoughts on? Give me a rating out of 10 for the entire weekend. I'll start with Claire.
Rating out of 10, I'd say 7. I mean, maybe 8. I'll go with an 8 because of Lando's performance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was good to see the practices and then a crazy qualifying. As a McLaren fan, I'm mixed because I love Danny too. So with Lando's shock Q1 exit, but then Daniel Ricciardo's P4 start, that was pretty good for me. So yeah, I mean, and then the race it was great. So yeah, a little bit of a snooze fest at first, but they got into it after first thought.
Cool.
Solid 9 on 10. Solid 9 on 10.
Oh.
Nice.
The goat is back. Looks great. But 9 on 10. It was a good race for, I think, at least the second half of the race was good. Mexico tends to be a snooze fest because of lack of overtaking, but I give it a solid 9 on 10.
Nice. This one's actually a solid 9 out of 10 for me as well. All around, I think you got some shock performances, and you also got some I think all around it was shock performances from everyone except for Max, really. And even then, it's still kind of a shock.
Yeah.
We had the Ferraris took out the front row. Max not on pole, which is a shock. Danny Rick in P4, shocker. Both the Alfa Romeos in Q3, shocker. Lando out in Q1 because of an Alonso spin. Alonso spun. It's a really shocking qualifying session, and then the race. I mean, into turn 1, Max takes the lead. Check goes out of the race. Both the Ferraris stuck 2-3. End of the race, you have the 3 best teams on the podium with the 3 best drivers on the podium. Although I wouldn't say I would take Carlos over Charles personally, but and then Lando.
McLaren is one of the best 3 teams. Let's just.
Because of their weekend, they weren't one of the top 3 this weekend. But you had arguably you have 2 of the 3 most talented drivers to ever grace the sport on the podium, and I think if Alonso would have been up there, then you had 3 of the most talented drivers ever to touch the sport on the podium. But alas, Alonso retired, Stroll retired, Sargent retired, Magnussen hit a wall, and that car was decimated, so he retired. And obviously Checo retired. Yeah. We'll start with Mercedes just because Jakob needs to get going pretty soon here. But how did you guys feel about Mercedes weekend? You guys get to see the full depth of James Allison's first upgrade that they brought in the US last week. So how do you guys feel about the performance of the car?
Lewis definitely got the most out of it, and George was being George, and he didn't. So,
I mean, I think that's a tough statement. I think the thing is just it's just more evidence that if you give Lewis a competitive car, he's right there.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't. I think yes, he got kind of lucky that there is that luck aspect that Perez was not in it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the more you look at his pace, the more the move he made on Leclerc, one of the overtakes of the season. I think he would have, even if Perez had caught up to say the podium places, I think Lewis would have still finished on the podium, just because of his sheer pace, and Ferrari's lack of thinking about strategy. But and just his over, I think it was a great weekend. I think it gives us you're seeing James Allison's work. Getting sort of reaping some benefits, and George is learning the inevitable. But you're not gonna say everything that you say and then go up against a 7-time world champion and find it easy.
Yeah.
So I think he might have just believed the hype from last season a little too much and thought that he was slightly better. But I think he'll bounce back at some point. Yeah. He's talented enough.
We don't really have to talk about Red Bull very much, but I do want to talk about this topic of James Allison versus Adrian Newey. Obviously, as we know, James Allison has been the biggest contest that Newey has had in his time as an aerodynamicist. with Allison being the one to design Ferrari's 2002, 3, and 4 car, along with all of Mercedes cars all the way up until 2020, which obviously were some of the most dominant cars in their eras with Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton. So, how does this make you guys feel kind of going into 2024 with the knowledge that Allison's still working on the 2024 car and Red Bull and Newey not having upgraded this Red Bull since, I want to say, Hungary this year?
I mean, I feel like we have false hope from. I don't know. I want Mercedes to like go into this and fighting for it, but I know that Red Bull is like putting their all into it and not this year's car. So it's like I know that like Red Bull will be top of the order next year, but I'm hoping that Mercedes can like at least come close.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, yeah. Look, Adrian Newey clearly has the distinct right now, like because their baseline is so like competitive and so far ahead of everyone else. You would assume that Adrian Newey and will have like that competitive advantage going into next year, and they're making progress. But I think, James Allison is responsible for some of the most dominant cars in the history of the sport, and he didn't have a say on 2022. But after 2021, after 2022, he hasn't much of a say, and now we're sort of going back to his designs, and if he can start off with a very competitive base car for 2024, I mean, I'm sure it'll take a minute, maybe a half a season or maybe 2024, the entirety of it, but they'll catch up. I think we'll see like the benefit of James Allison coming back to Mercedes and taking over as chief technical officer.
Yeah. Kind of bringing in the top 4 teams now with I'll use McLaren as the 4th instead of Aston Martin because that's a whole nother topic, but right now the estimations are that Red Bull, because of the amount of time they've been putting into their 2024 car, they're suspected to have gained anywhere from 8 tenths to an extra second for the start of next year, and the other 3 teams are suspected to have gained 6 to 8 tenths. So kind of, does that put a little bit of a damper on your expectations, or do you think it's still?
No, it's still like there's still. If from now they've gained like a second, and the other teams have gained 6 to 8 tenths, that still is a 2 tenths difference. That's not that much of a catch up.
Okay.
But Red Bull already has a huge gap on everyone.
Red Bull has a huge gap, but I think what will hinder them,
just adding to that.
Yeah, well, I mean, but like, again, like this is all just speculation, right?
Yeah.
If you next season, like Mercedes could come up with like the W11, but a new version of it, right? And it could just be like a dominant car. So I think what Red Bull is hindering right now, even if they gain that competitive car, is like Max will be Max. He will perform. He will drive flawlessly. He'll drive like the robot that he is. But like second seat, who do you have? Because like the way Checo raced on Sunday, you'd have thought he was in like, yeah, the way he told us about his approach, like going for broke, like you would have thought he was in like an F1 F1 2023 like game lobby, like oh yeah, I'm just gonna go around the turn 1 and see what happens, and like so like I think like, I mean, there's a lot of rumors running around now. Like, because Aston Martin, there's being a lot of shares of Aston Martin got sold this morning, and either Fernando Alonso is going to Red Bull, which I don't think is going to happen.
Yeah.
But Daniel Ricciardo is certainly making a case for himself. So, I think what they do with that second seat is how the championship will turn out eventually.
Last question, and then you're good to go. But do you think that this year? So. Most teams are expected to be a lot more conformed to Red Bull's designs, even more so than this year. Do you think the Mercedes will also start taking after it, or do you think they'll still like kind of take a really unique route with their development path?
I mean, they've kind of taken their own. They've kind of conformed to the Red Bull path with the side pods.
Yeah.
And the shape of them, but listen, if it works, like you kind of have to go the way you're going, and then find a way to make like if you're gonna copy Red Bull, but make it more competitive than Red Bull. And that's easier said than done, right?
Yeah, because essentially playing catch up.
Yeah, you're playing catch up, and like catching up to Adrian Newey right now is not going to be that easy. But I mean, I would think they'll stick to what they're. I will think they'll conform to an extent to what they're to the Red Bull sort of Red Bull concept, and then maybe they develop in a way that like catches them up to Red Bull. Maybe they don't, but I would think that the obvious choice is to conform to an extent to Red Bull's concept.
Cool. Well, you gotta get going, so
All right.
that's a
Peace,
peace out
guys.
from Jakob.
See ya.
All right. You heard all the opinions on Mercedes and Red Bull and the fight that should be happening next year, but let's talk about Ferrari. Before we jump into how their race went, Fred Vasseur and Laurent Mekies, who is leaving the team at the end of the year, both spoke on next year's car. And I'm not 100% if this is exactly how they phrased it, but essentially what they're going for next year is they have the pace, they have the qualifying pace, they have the race pace. The one problem that they actually have right now is tire degradation, and apparently most of their upgrades that are going to be coming for the early part of next season aren't going to be focused on making the car faster, just focused on making the tires last longer, because we've seen them out-qualify Red Bulls in, I think, 4 different occasions this year. So, but yeah. Your thoughts on
Gosh,
Ferrari's race?
them knowing that tire deg is like their biggest issue, and then putting Charles on a one stop for Austin is just so mind boggling. It's like,
Yeah.
and that just doesn't even make sense to me. That does not make sense to me.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that Ferrari would do that. Anyway, their race, it was good. It was kind of unremarkable, I'd say. After, like, they got in like a holding pattern of like not going for Lewis, kind of like accepting that he was, going to be P2. Yeah, and then Sainz kind of just accepting that he was going to be behind the car. They didn't really fight much, so it was like they didn't want to fall in the dirty air either, I believe. So
Yeah.
makes sense, but kind of just like acceptance of where they are, not really like the fighting passion that you would want from them. But good points for Ferrari in their fight against McLaren, I suppose, and even jumping towards Mercedes.
Yeah. Interesting thing. Last year actually was the exact same for the Ferraris. It was Red Bulls and Mercedes in front of them, and then it was the Ferraris in 5-6, and they were like 10 seconds behind the Mercedes, but like 30 seconds ahead of the next car. So it felt like this weekend's race was almost identical to last year's race for them.
But except it was
3-4
it was Lando
person.
carving through the field instead of Danny carving through the field.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's jump to McLaren.
different McLaren driver.
Awkward Saturday, but a really good Sunday. You guys finished 5-8. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's confusing a little bit, just that Oscar couldn't find the pace. Obviously, he had tough competition competing against Yuki, which was like kind of a surprise, but that was a good fight. Sad for Yuki, he obviously had the pace.
Yeah, I'll talk
just,
about AlphaTauri.
tried to do what Checo did.
I'm so excited to talk about them.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, no, Oscar, like, I it's kind of sad. Like, he had like pretty much the same car as Lando, but wasn't able to move forward. Lando, because of the offset strategy, probably, and just like Lando's need to overtake. Like, he was in a different mindset. But that was a crazy race from Lando.
Yeah.
Moving backwards on the restart, and then pretty much starting over and going right back up the field.
Yeah.
Crazy overtaking machine.
It's wild.
That's Orlando. I mean, he is.
Yeah, over the past 2
top
years,
tier driver.
He's been really like working on his racecraft, and so like when he first started, I think he was much more of a holding type of driver, like still learning the ropes of F1. But this year, and towards the end of last year, you could see him like really showing off like how well he's been getting on with overtaking. And so I think he got like 20-something overtakes this race, which is a ton.
It's crazy. And a place where you don't overtake.
I mean, I don't
unless you have a
understand
significant
the
pace
concept of
advantage,
people
which he
saying
did.
don't overtake on this track. It's actually one of the easiest tracks to overtake on, given how long the straight is. And also, like, not to put down any other
But it's,
drivers
like,
or
risky.
cars. Not particularly.
It was risky.
The-
Hamilton's overtake on Leclerc was risky. anyone going into
but
turn
most
one,
of
it was
Lando's
super
overtakes
risk.
were into turn one of the series of corners from 7 to 9, which the track is wide enough to hold 3 cars through all of those corners and the straight. And the straight actually can hold 4 cars wide.
Sure, but that overtake on George was just waited for his moment. Just, no, you didn't like it?
I think his overtake on Valtteri was significantly better. Was it Valtteri?
I didn't see that one because they didn't
No, it was
put
on.
it
It
on
was
the
actually
TV.
no. It was on. It was on Danny. The series of corners from 6 to 9. That was around the outside, and
Yeah,
then
that
the
was
inside,
good.
and then around the inside again. That was sick. Some great overtakes.
Yeah, because Danny put up a pretty good fight.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was good to see him like that again. But I think Lando's also like kind of remotivated because after like the stint of races from Belgium all the way up until Qatar, he was definitely like feeling the pressure of Oscar like kind of breathing down his neck. And then I think after Qatar something just clicked for him, and now he's back up to, I wouldn't even say his usual stuff. I'd say he's actually like much quicker because Oscar and Lando both switched to medium tires on the red flag, and Lando was literally half a second faster per lap. And it wasn't just over Oscar.
Oscar's also a rookie, so it's.
I'm not counting Oscar as a rookie.
He is though.
I'm not counting him as one. Lando,
he's rookie of the year. What do you mean?
You can call him that, and anybody can say he's a rookie, but I'm not calling him a rookie. But Lando wasn't just lapping 5 tenths faster than Oscar. He was also lapping 3.5 tenths faster than George, 2 tenths faster than Lewis, and he was matching Max for times. So yeah, the car clearly is getting better, but he's still not happy with the way it turns out of corners. I'll talk about this more once we get to the AlphaTauris. But moving down the field, Aston Martin, not much to talk about. Both of them DNF'd. Alonso had a problem at the very end, last lap of the race with Logan Sargent, so both of them came into the pits at the very end of the race. Done for them. Lance Stroll couldn't finish the race. Done for him. I don't want to talk about the controversy that's going on with them, and like how the team might have get sold or whatever, because we
don't know.
It's too much to speculate about, and that's there have been talks about it, like Lawrence selling it to the Saudi Arabian Sports Beneficial Fund, whatever it's called. I don't know what it's called, but it's too much speculation to go through, and whatever TikTok says, I won't believe it until it actually becomes like solid fact. Moving down the field, 6th place Alpine. Did they get points? I think they got 1. They got 1 point with Esteban. After Nico started falling back, Gasly finished P11, so they still got a solitary point. Again, Alpine's one of those teams where they might have an on week and they might have an off one, but they're in an in-between where they're over 120 points behind McLaren, but more than 80 points ahead of 7th place Williams. So, what's up?
I want to see Oscar score more than Alpine.
I think he already has.
As a team.
No, I think he
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Alpine's at 108.
No.
Points, isn't it?
He's only at like 80 something.
He's at 87. And Alpine as a team right now are at 101.
I want to see that happen though. Just for like.
Good for you.
Vibes.
I guess.
No, but Esteban's radio message was pretty good. To Haas saying I'm coming, but then he did not put up a fight until Nico's tires fell off.
That's the dumbest thing.
It was comical. It was comical.
Dude,
it's like, what are you doing? Alpine is a joke, except for the free press they're getting from the celebrity investors. So
I guess.
Does your team have Rory McIlroy?
I don't care about Rory McIlroy as an investor because it's not going to do anything. They're already peaked as a team. They're not going to do anything. It's a stupid investment. Nothing will change my mind on that. No, we didn't get Rory McIlroy. We got a Puma. We got a Puma sponsorship instead of a bunch of actors and athletes. I'd take that 10 days of the week.
I really like the idea of athletes investing in other sports.
I mean, cool.
I like the crossover.
The concept is cool. It's just pick a better team. I don't care if there's not a better team to invest in. Just pick a
Yeah,
better team.
no, but maybe you never know. You could be eating your words later.
Sure, that's like me eating my words with Oscar and McLaren. If it happens, awesome, good for them.
Yeah.
But Alpine is a team that has notoriously finished 5, 6, 7, and it's not changing. So they were already
They're going to
running
be
at the cost cap.
P6.
Exactly.
P6.
They're falling back 2 places, and it's not even close.
They need better personnel. They need to do good hiring,
They do
and
this every
that'll come with
year.
time.
It won't come with time. They do this all the time. It's not gonna change anything.
Okay.
It's not a smart
Talk
investment.
about
Whatever.
number. Let's do P8 now.
P7.
Qatar?
Williams.
What? P7 Williams. Oh,
Logan retired on the last lap of the race.
Logan.
I don't know what happened between
Fuel
him
pump?
and Fernando, but something.
fuel
happened,
pump issue.
and I have no clue. They didn't release it on the F1 app or the Williams app, so I have no clue what happened with his car. But he came into the pits on the very last lap of the race. That's the most.
He was in P13, so it was a good race for him.
Yeah, Lance kind of screwed up his race with some seriously stupid moves. He definitely moved 3 times in the braking zone.
Yeah, he was moving and braking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for those of you who don't understand why that's such a big problem, when you move while you're braking, first off, you're allowed to do that once, thanks to Max, because of that move he did on Seb back in 2017. But the more you move under braking, your tires start locking up more and more, and when another driver is forcing you to brake harder and in different directions, you start getting more spotty tires, and that makes you slower. So that's why you can't do that anymore. But yeah, it was a decent race from him. I don't know if you looked at the tech analysis before the race started. It said that Williams were 6/10 behind Red Bull after all 3 practices, but that includes both drivers. Alex was obviously less than a tenth off of Max during FP1 and 3, while Logan was 1.2 seconds off, which is why it was 6/10 instead of as close as it was.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. So, but we scored 2 points. That's good. AlphaTauri.
Where did Alex qualify?
Alex
Like he did
qualified
was
15th.
in qualifying. Yeah.
His lap
So-
time got deleted from Q2. So, he was in P9. But,
that'll
yeah. Yeah.
good job, Alex.
Yeah.
3 consecutive points finishes for him.
Thank.
Yeah,
don't know.
I think I saw a post of him in Lily going like 3.
Nice.
Yeah.
Before we jump to AlphaTauri, because I want to go so in depth with them for a sec, let's just jump to the last 2 teams. Who's in 9th? Alfa Romeo. Valtteri continued a streak of constantly qualifying in the top 10, even though he didn't finish in the top 10.
Yeah, but
this
no-
time.
No points scored yet.
I think you can tell out the team that's just waiting for Audi to take over. Is that next year? Or is that the following?
Yeah,
Is next year?
2026. So
Well, another takeover is 2 years before.
2 years.
Is it 2024 2025?
Oh, okay.
I don't know. One of them. Next year, Alfa Romeo is becoming a name sponsor for Haas, which I don't know if Sauber will then just be Sauber for 2
That's a-
years.
They'll probably try to find another name sponsor, but that is not a good move. I know that they have to do it, but like moving to Haas, what is that going to do? They're behind them in the
Well, there's
championship.
no other team they can go to get the Alfa Romeo name, because Alfa Romeo, at the end of the day, is
I
really
know.
just name sponsorship. So
I know. It's still just
that
Oh.
car has the upgrades have not moved it very far. I think they moved like 0.14 seconds forward, which is still an increase, but not very much. And then last team, Haas, they brought upgrades in Austin. I don't understand what's going on. We were so excited that they were going to be, and I quote, going to the cost cap. And they literally, the whole year, have been throwing the entire year away to say, hey, just wait for Austin. We'll bring this massive upgrade package, essentially a B-spec car, and nothing. And then when they did tech analysis,
Nothing.
they've gained like
K-Mags.
less than a tenth
Yeah.
of time. Like what? I don't understand what's going on. Is that a team worth keeping?
Throwing
Like if
money
you're Gene
away.
Haas, do you really want to keep that team around?
No, just for his relevance and his love of racing.
Yeah.
I don't know about more than that. It's been a losing investment. So,
Like every year they show
So
us
I
the
don't know.
money, and then this year they actually say they have money. And I'm just wondering where it's at. And you have like Nico's doing
Yeah,
great. You
where it's
re-sign
going.
both your drivers. Why wouldn't you invest in a young driver? I don't know. It seems like
Yeah.
a moot point to talk very much about them just because they're falling farther backward as per the usual. But let's talk about the excitement of the weekend. AlphaTauri. So AlphaTauri brought an upgrade in Japan, and I said it on the weekend, but I will say it again. That upgrade is crazy. Japan, Singapore, you got to see Lawson driving, and I was like, wait, this upgrade's actually kind of crazy. And Yuki was driving better, and it wasn't an upgrade for speed; it was an upgrade for downforce. The car was never inherently fast, and decided not to touch it. So what they did was they touched the floor concept, and they made it more aerodynamically efficient. And man, is it efficient, because all the drivers complain about this problem, except for Max, that they have to do this kind of V into the corner where it's, I don't know if I'll see if I can find a graphic for you to put it in, but essentially they go in a straight line and then brake and then start turning, so it makes like a straight and then it starts curving. Normally just most drivers like the U shape where you just curve into the corner, but that's not happening for most drivers, which a lot of them are complaining about. Lando complains about it all the time. And he's like, if the car was able to do a U shape, they would gain like 6 to 8 tenths a lap, and that's how most teams are. And it's actually a factual thing because the braking point changes. Like you don't have to brake as hard. You get to carry more speed basically. But the AlphaTauri is able to do that, and so Danny Rick in Austin was testing a bunch of different things with the car, and so he had to settle for Yuki's setup while he was still working on a couple of things. First race back, that's fine. But Mexico, he was like, I can go with more front end, less rear end, because it gives him more of that U shape. The rear can slide a little bit, that's fine. And you get to see how much faster they are. And then Danny's set up for this race.
And it worked.
It's so quick. It's so quick. I'm so excited about it because that is a team that's been struggling all year. And I'm like, I don't think people understood how crazy of an upgrade this was when they brought it. But we got to see Danny qualified P4, and then where did Yuki qualify?
I don't know. Downfield, definitely. I'm not sure that he made it to Q3.
He might have made it. Did he make it to Q2?
No, he started back because he changed parts.
Oh, so hell of a race from him.
So
then.
he knew that, yes, he was in Lando's situation by choice because he knew that he was going to have to swap parts and take a penalty.
Yeah.
So that's why he gave Danny a tow during quali to even further help and make him, like, allow him to save more tires for the race.
Yeah. So
it was a team effort.
AlphaTauri, what a play.
Yep.
Yeah. This further, so one of the things that's notable is that the AlphaTauri new floor concept has taken a lot from the Red Bull. And that's not because of sharing of concepts, because you're not actually legally allowed to do that, even if you are the sister team. That's actually just Danny Rick's input that he's been giving on the simulator over his time of recovery. He tried to explain it to McLaren, and McLaren couldn't do it. He explained it to AlphaTauri, and obviously they understood because AlphaTauri still is technically part of Red Bull.
Yeah.
So he's explained it to them in a way that they can kind of understand it, and they gave him the exact thing that he was looking for. And if you're wondering why he didn't show this pace in Hungary or Zandvoort or any of the other races he was in, it's because they didn't have this upgrade before that. But it's one of the coolest things I've seen all season, and it's so underrated. Anywho.
Well, we're rating it.
Yeah.
It's rated.
AlphaTauri is going to score more points this year. It hurts to say it because I don't want to see Williams fall down the table after all that.
They're coming for Williams.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm like, if Danny Rick
They
scores,
are coming for Williams.
if he scores 2 more P7 finishes, that puts them on par with Williams, and it'll technically put them in front of them because higher points place finishes.
Yep.
But that's also assuming that Alex isn't scoring 2 points at a time. which we're in Brazil next week.
It's Hamilton's home race.
Yeah, honorary
Yeah.
home race. But Brazil is
Mhm.
also probably one of the coolest race weekends of the year. And no offense to Abu Dhabi or any other circuit, but Brazil needs to host the final every
It's a
year.
sprint too.
Yeah.
They're doing it as a sprint.
Like, I think a lot of people hate the sprint format, but when it comes to Brazil, I think everybody likes it there because the racing there is just too good. It's one of the shorter
Yeah,
tracks.
I love Brazil on driving on F1.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
video game.
Yeah. It just throws up the best racing. I mean, it's like 72 laps of just raw overtaking and not a lot of super overtaking along the main straight, but overtaking into corners and like raw driving. It's one of my favorite things. The
Mhm.
drivers are always like flat out against each other. The turns are super tight knit and super like some of them slow, some medium, some fast. So you get to see really where each car excels. Um, Strong weekend for McLaren, as they are doing well in all speeds of corners. I'm assuming Mercedes is going to do well, hopefully. George Russell won last year, so hopefully
Dude,
he can do
I
well
want to see
this year.
Lando P2.
You want to see a Lando P2?
And out there right now.
You're going to
Yes.
say Lando P2? Oh my god. For the sprint or the race?
Yeah. Race.
Okay.
And the sprint.
Okay, give me your podium for the sprint and the race next week.
He is going to qualify well.
Okay. Give me your top three
And
for
then
the
I will
sprint
translate.
and the
Okay.
race.
For the sprint, I go Max, Carlos, Lando. Okay.
Oh? Okay.
Carlos, he's coming back with fury. He's going to out qualify. He's going to go for pole, the sprint pole. And then he's going to get overtaken by Max. So we'll see that. And then Charles is going to mess it up somehow. Yeah. For the actual race, he's got to win it. I just don't see how he doesn't. So we'll say Max, Lando, and then we'll throw Liz on the podium because I want to see that.
I'm gonna hit you with a shocker.
What do you think?
But I think Lando's gonna win the sprint. Max P2, Lewis P3. But I think during the race, the podium's gonna be. I don't want I don't want Kuba to see this episode, but I think Lewis is gonna win in Brazil. I'm gonna
Lewis
say
wins in Brazil.
I'm gonna say
That's the name of the episode. That's what I'm making it. Lewis wins in Brazil.
I think it's gonna be Lewis on top. I'm gonna say George P2. I'm gonna say Max P2.
Mercedes won too?
They did it last year.
What happens to Max that he's P3?
Mercedes was faster than Max last year.
Okay.
So
Okay, Patrick.
I just said that Max is gonna lose 2 races back to back. In a year that he's already broken his own record for most race wins. And he's already tied his record for
lose the
most
sprint.
podiums.
And he's gonna lose the main race. Next weekend is not his weekend, as you say. You think Red Bull is just gonna fall short in Brazil, or what?
They fell short last
You
year.
think other cars are gonna shine?
No, I think it's just that Red Bull fell short last year. During the sprint, Max didn't have any problems. He just flat out lost to George. I think there were different tire strategies last year. Correct me if I'm wrong. One might have been softs, one might have been on mediums. But regardless, Mercedes were just really fast last year. And maybe it's just because the temperature in the car from last year. But, I mean, it was both races back to back. And then even during the race when Max sent it into Lewis, he was still behind Lewis and George. So I don't know if it's a Mercedes thing, like if it's just a Mercedes track, but Mercedes around this track have been insane last year and the year before. And I mean, 2021, we saw Lewis come from P20 in the sprint to P5, get another penalty, go from P15 to P1 in the race. If this isn't
Yeah, that's
if
true.
this isn't a Lewis and Mercedes dominated track, I don't know what track you would call. Well, outside of
Yeah.
Silverstone.
Okay, so you're saying that Jakob has a chance to come back in the fantasy with
Oh no,
all
absolutely
Mercedes
not.
points?
He's like,
Just kidding.
I
Just
think
a little
he's
bit.
like
Clawing his way
1,600
back a
points
little bit.
behind.
All right. Okay, that's the season.
You
Cool.
could save him.
And what do I do? I need to use my like chips.
Oh yeah, that's true. I used most of mine already.
Shoot.
I used mine towards the halfway
Okay.
mark because it was really hard to. I don't know how many of you guys play F1 Fantasy, but trying to determine when you're using each of your chips for each of your teams is kind of hard, especially during the midway point of the year because you're not sure who's like where. You would have been. I mean, first off, you can have Max as your DRS boost every weekend and probably score the most points no matter what. That's what I have for all three of my teams. But outside of Max and Red Bull, most of my
I think
teams
I
are
had
split up.
I had Matt as my DRS boost on the weekend that Carlos won.
That's kind of funny. But yeah, I think I have one
Like,
token
oh, I
left on each
finally
of my
like logged
teams.
in. I'm making an effort.
I still have my 3 times boost on all 3 of them, and then I think on one of them I have limitless still, which is where you can make as many trades as you want. So I think between me and you, there's what, 600 points, something like that.
I don't know. I need to start using my chips though.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna do that.
All right.
I'm gonna make you wear.
got your predictions.
What?
I mean, good luck. You'll have a hard time figuring out something for me. But Brazil next week, Mexico. What a race! What qualifying! The whole shebang. You heard it here.
Patrick says Lewis
I
is gonna
said
win.
that Lewis is gonna win the actual race in Brazil, provided he doesn't have another collision with Max. Those two are spectacular at doing that. But yeah, if you stayed to the end of the episode, let me know what your thoughts were on Danny Rick's drive to P7, but almost P6 against George. And yeah, until next time.
It's lights out and away we go.